Greetings, everybody, and welcome to today's C2 webinar on building a better cybersecurity program. My name is Dave Clark. I'll be your host for today's event. Now, before we get started, just a quick note to let you know that this will be a very interactive webinar today. If you have any questions for the speakers, we invite you to type them at any time into the Q&A box on your screen. We'll answer those questions during a live Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. So get all those questions in. And if your question is specific to one particular person, if you could, please be sure to indicate that person's name in your question. All right, so let's get started with today's presentation on building a better cybersecurity program. And let's begin by meeting our presenters. Kevin Powers is Vice President of Enterprise Systems at C2. He's been with C2 for 4 years and in the enterprise technology space for over 20 years. Kevin's focus is around the total experience across C2 clients' cloud infrastructure, integration solution services, and personalized managed services. Jeff French is Managed Services Support and Networking Manager at C2. Jeff has been with C2 since 2012 and brings in-depth IT and technical program management experience to the company. And Shanna Utgard is Success Manager at Defendify, which is the all-in-one cybersecurity platform that's simple, affordable, and works on multiple levels. Shanna is a CRN Women of the Channel Award winner and a frequent speaker on how cybersecurity can be possible for all businesses. We'll be hearing from Jeff and Shanna a little later on, but first up today is Kevin. So Kevin, I'm going to turn things over to you now. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, David. First and foremost, thank you to everyone joining the session today. To Dave's point, we really would like it to be interactive, and whether or not you're holding the questions and or soliciting the feedback via chat, but let's keep it interactive. That's kind of the mantra and where the best outcomes come. Just a quick overview of C2. As you can read the slide, we position ourselves as a digital solutions company, and we have 3 core areas. I think a majority of our clients and folks on the call today are familiar with our strategy here, but I do want to call out and thank our marketing team for spending a lot of time, helping C2 modernize our own look and feel. So please refer back to our website. That should give you more information, provide a very content-rich, experience for you. And so just a quick thank you to Jennifer and the marketing team and pulling that together. The slides here from our branding are indicative of some of our touches there. But I also want to cover off on one thing and why we thought Defendify was a great partner for us and for our clients is that, when we evaluated what our clients were asking for and where the market was a couple of years ago, we got to know Defendify via relationships we had in the field, and just tremendous value, both technically and from a business alignment. And we really view that high value partnerships as something that we want to foster and continue to grow. And we view Defendify strategically in this space as one of our partners that helps our clients get technology done, get business done, and be able to do it in a very simple and affordable way. So I'm really looking forward to folks on this call enjoying what Shanna has to say. And hopefully there'll be some takeaways at the end of it as far as either more education or awareness. But we're really excited about the Defendify partnership. It's been around for over 6 to 9 months, inside of C2, and we're excited about kind of doing this public session here with everybody. And as we go to the next slide around where we see it being positioned, not only within our Vigilant 24 managed services offerings, but in the market in general, just a quick, commercial, if you will, or a slide on, our managed services platform. So we have our Vigilant 24 enterprise clouds, as well as our cybersecurity. Obviously, a part of the cybersecurity, Defendify is going to be a critical step that we go through with our clients. The rest of the managed services, we offer a full breadth, and we offer it up and down the stack, from application testing and support to cloud hosting and our ability to be that cloud solutions provider. So very much looking forward to expanding the conversation for folks that want to learn more about that. But I think at this point, Jeff's going to walk us through how the Vigilant 24 security steps are framed up. And then we're going to get to the real value with Shanna, and really looking forward to, hearing that and making sure that our clients and everyone understand where Defendify is optimizing our position in reducing risk inside of that cybersecurity market. So Jeff, if you can maybe walk us through the pendulum here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. So Kevin sort of outlined all the different types of services we offer under the umbrella of Vigilant 24 Managed Services here at C2. And today we want to look at managed cybersecurity in whole that we offer at C2, and then we're going to dig in to our Defendify partner who focuses on that foundational tools section of this maturity curve. So I think most people, obviously, if we start down at the bottom end of the maturity curve as far as cybersecurity goes in terms of antivirus, anti-malware, those sit on your endpoints. They protect against known vulnerabilities. They perform your standard file scanning. They're kind of the base cybersecurity protection layer that everybody has. Also, then you move up with firewalls, right? You can set your rules, unauthorized access, put some controls around your network, what comes in, what comes out. These are pretty standard IT operations, base core security layers. And for those of you that are C2 Managed Services customers today, those are the type of things that we help you with IT operations manage and take care of and ensure you have that base layer of protection. Where we go up next in the curve is what we call foundational tools. We've partnered with Defendify, who you'll find they have a really broad and rich set of tools to help you manage risk. I'm not going to steal Shanna's thunder, she'll go through them, but they have to do with vulnerability scanning and phishing training. We can order up penetration testing should that be something that you need for compliance. And it just gives you a broad stretch of items that you need to help start your journey down a true cybersecurity model. And then further up on the maturity curve is another offering that C2 has that we'll discuss possibly in another webinar, which is our managed services detection and response. For those that know, we do a lot of IT operations, fixed price, make sure your organization is stable. This is adding in another layer where we now bring into a full SOC as a service, where we have trained cybersecurity engineers in the United States, and we can actively do threat hunting and monitoring and making sure that your environment is protected at that next layer. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Shanna. We're going to go a little bit deeper today on our foundational tools with our partner Defendify, and she can go through all the great services and products that are offered. Shanna.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I am Shanna Utgard. I am the success manager at Defendify. We, as Dave mentioned earlier, we're an all-in-one cybersecurity platform designed specifically for non-enterprise organizations. So today we're going to dig into some incidents that have happened in the cybersecurity landscape. We're going to talk about where the threats are actually coming from. And we're going to provide some tips and tricks on what you can do to help protect your organization, and even use in your personal life. If you've been through a cybersecurity awareness webinar before, I promise you this is going to be nothing like the last one. And by the end of it, you're going to say, when did she breathe? And you'll know what a well-rounded cybersecurity program looks like. So to start off with a few stories here, the first one we're going to talk about is the Anthem breach. Folks on this call may have even been affected. There were 78.8 million people who lost their personal health information in this breach. It all started with a phishing email that came into the organization, and the employee interacted with that email, and it allowed remote access to the network. An alarming detail is that it took Anthem almost a year to discover that an attacker was even inside their network. You can see from the stat at the bottom there that the mean time to identify a breach, on average, an attacker can be inside of a network for 197 days before they're discovered. We like this story here because it's close to home for us. We're based in Maine. There are only 1 million people in the entire state, but cyber attacks are still happening here. This is a story from the Maine Office of Information Technology. They decided that they were going to use a tool to move a database. What they didn't realize is that this web-based tool ended up putting confidential private information of 2,100 foster parents on a public-facing website. The statistic here is that 43% of data breaches are caused by an insider threat. Later, we're going to cover what an actual insider threat is. And this is our last story. MacEwan University is a Canadian school up in Alberta. They were doing some construction on their campus, and they got an email from their construction company stating, we're changing banks in a few weeks. We want to make sure that any payments are sent to the correct bank. And that communication went on back and forth for weeks between the school finance department and that contracting company. The university paid the contractor, but those wire transfers totaling $11.8 million were actually sent to cyber attackers who had been posing as the construction company all along. What's amazing to me is that a crime this significant was accomplished simply by email. So if you're like most people, you might think that a cyber attack isn't likely to happen to you, or you don't have any information that an attacker would want. We hear so much in the news about enterprise organizations being victims of cybercrime, but in actual fact, 68% of small businesses have experienced a cyber attack in the last 12 months, and 50% of all the attacks that occur are targeting small and mid-sized companies. It's interesting when we start to think about what type of information they're going after. The number one thing that I hear is, well, we don't store credit card numbers. But when you start talking to organizations about what types of data they need to protect, I like to ask the question, would I be comfortable posting this information on a public website for everyone to read? Your sales brochures, sure. But if the answer is no to that question, it's sensitive and it needs to be protected. So thinking about the types of information that you store, it could be credit cards, personally identifiable information, personal health information, your company IP and trade secrets. We work with a food company, and they said that the data that they're trying to protect is their recipes. Tax documents for your company and your employees, bank information, wire transfer details, vendor agreements and price lists, legal documents, contracts, and then all of your customer sensitive data that you hold as well. When we think about the cyber criminals, these threats are coming from a variety of different areas. So in our top left, we have cyber criminals who are causing their crimes to make money. In the top right, we have hacktivists who are causing their attacks maybe because they don't like a particular company or a political party. Anonymous is a great example. In the bottom left, we have cyber soldiers from other countries. They may even be state-sponsored. We've been seeing a lot about this in the news. There was a 60-minute segment the other day about the SolarWinds attack. And we're doing the same thing in the other direction in a defensive nature. And then in the bottom right, we have our insider threat. So does anybody recognize this guy from the movies? If you think you know who he is, throw it in the chat. This is our insider threat. So insider threats are employees, contractors, ex-employees, or ex-contractors who have or had valid access to the network and data. Their actions could be malicious, but oftentimes they just do things in error. So a great example was that IT person who put the confidential information of the foster parents online. I'm sure he didn't mean to, it wasn't intentional. It can be very simple to become an insider threat. I go to send an email to Jeff, I start typing in JEFF, I hit enter, it auto-populates, but it auto-populates the wrong Jeff, and I just sent confidential information to the wrong person, only because I was moving too quickly. So that image down there is the guy from Jurassic Park. He's the one that was trying to steal the dinosaur DNA and sell it. This gives you an idea of what data sells for in the dark web. We mentioned that cyber criminals are causing their crimes to make money. The dark web is not some place that you can go to with Google Chrome or Internet Explorer. People use Tor browsers to supposedly hide their identity. There's chat rooms and forums, and this is where people can go to sell things they shouldn't be selling, including information. So as you can see here, the more information that goes along with the record, the more valuable it is. So medical records, we continue to see top the charts. Many reasons for that, a lot of information that's included there, but also it can be used for insurance fraud, very popular. We've even seen things like extortion of a CEO of a company because they had an undisclosed medical condition. They didn't want anyone to know about it. There are a lot of different tactics that cyber criminals use. The most prevalent is social engineering. I like to call this people hacking, but this is one of the tactics that we see the most. And of that, phishing emails are very popular. Over 90% of cyber attacks start with a successful phishing email. Back in the day, phishing emails were kind of that shotgun approach. They targeted large numbers of people at one time. You may have received an email once from a Nigerian prince with millions to get out of the country. And believe it or not, we do still see this quite often. But now we're seeing these phishing attacks get much more sophisticated and professional. They use actual company logos. They mimic the emails that the companies send out. They're signed "Your Friends at Netflix." So it's not as simple as just looking for bad grammar anymore. Spear phishing is the act of sending emails to specific and well-researched targets purporting to be a trusted sender. So the aim here is either to infect devices with malware or convince targets to hand over some information or money. The first step in these spear phishing attacks is an investigation. So they're doing their research, they're looking at your company hierarchy on your webpage, they're on LinkedIn, they're trying to make it look like these emails are appearing to come from somebody within the company. So they may have obtained that information through LinkedIn or your website. People get really excited when they start new jobs, so they're updating their LinkedIn information. New employees are particularly good targets because they're really eager to please and do a good job. And a lot of the times they're unfamiliar with those internal processes because they're new. And if your marketing team is doing a really great job promoting your company, like in that McEwen University example, there's even more information for those cyber criminals to utilize. The information that you're sharing can be used against you. We actually saw the cyber criminals didn't realize that this posting was about a virtual event, but we still got a bunch of emails at Defendify saying, "Hey, it's Jim. I'm at the CompTIA event and I need a giveaway for my booth. So can you go out and buy $1,500 worth of gift cards and send me the numbers? I'm really busy. I'm not going to be able to respond." So just remember that when you're sharing that information online, it can be used to target you in these spear phishing attacks. Another tactic that they use is pretexting. So they're focusing on creating a good context or a fabricated scenario to get some more information out of you. So they'll use that to stage some secondary attacks. They might pose as, your leadership of your company, HR people, IT people, finance staff. Once they gather all of that information, they perform the actual spearfish. Even with the most comprehensive and expensive spam filters in place, these types of emails are still getting through. When they land on an employee's inbox, they're trying to get you to do one of four things. They want you to fill out a form so that they can get some information out of you. They want you to click on a link. They want you to open a file like Word, Excel, or PDF, or they're trying to get you to take some type of action. Maybe it's send a sensitive document, pay an invoice, send a wire transfer, provide some confidential information, buy gift cards. These requests usually have some type of emotional component to it. So it could be, fear, curiosity, a lot of urgency in there. They'll ask you to complete a task, but yet they're going to be unable to be contacted. Curiosity, we see a lot of, is this you? I saw these pictures of you. One of the worst phishing scams that I've seen recently targeted healthcare employees during the pandemic, and it told them that their job had been eliminated, and there was an attachment on the email that told them that they could look at their severance package and the compensation and the reason why they were being let go. So that was a terrible one that just played off a lot of different types of emotions. Helpfulness. There are also positive ones like reward. So, they might be, I saw a text message that's offered me a free year of Netflix during the pandemic. So a lot of different emotions involved in these phishing emails. I always tell people, if it triggers any type of emotional response within you, slow down and verify. It even goes further than computers. Text messaging can also be an attack method. So here's an example saying that your Apple ID is about to expire, or a CEO asking you to perform some type of action. Real SMS smishing message that I received about my Amazon Prime gift. There's a few reasons why text messages are being used as an attack method. Many employees are able to access sensitive information about the company from their mobile phones. You might check your email. Also, the open rates of text messages. There are no spam filters for our phones. So, you get a much higher open rate on texts. And you can also see from these images that the links are always weird and short. So we're not quite sure where that link actually goes to. And the phone is also being used as a target right now. So phishing is voice phishing. This usually targets assistants, receptionists, finance team members, and they're trying to use that same type of deception to reveal sensitive or confidential information. So a lot of the times they'll fake a caller ID and make it look like it's a phone call from your bank, or sometimes they call up saying that they're, your tech support and they need you to do some techie thing and go to this website or provide a password. If anybody calls you and asks you for sensitive information, tell them that you're going to hang up and call them back on a known and verified phone number. We see this a lot with scams pretending to be your bank or your cell phone company, the IRS, Social Security. Actually had a company say that they were called about their account with the Federal Reserve. And I thought that was a little weird because they were not a bank. So you want to go directly to that vendor or company website and call them back directly and confirm. So we could sit and talk about all of the different ways that you can recognize a phishing email coming in, but that doesn't help you in the case of an actual instance of business email compromise. So if someone's account has been taken over by the cybercriminals, you can verify the email address, you can look at the attachments, you can go through all those normal steps, but if their actual email account has been compromised and you open an attachment or click on a link, you're going to end up with an infection. So if you get an unexpected email, text, or phone call that's asking you to fill in a form, click on a link, open a file or an attachment, pay an invoice, or provide any type of confidential information, reach out to that sender to verify on a different communication method on a known phone number. I've received malicious attachments from people that I've done a lot of work with in the past and have sent me a lot of attachments previously, but all of a sudden I'll get some, file share link that was sent from them and I wasn't expecting it. So I always reach out and call and verify and confirm that they did actually send that request. Normally when you call and verify, they're going to say, no, don't open that attachment. I've gotten 10 calls already that, that went out. It's, I had an email hack. So why are they doing all of these things? Their main goal with all of those spear phishing emails and these attack methods are business email compromise, to deliver malware and attachments, some type of ransomware delivery, or to harvest your logon credentials. Some examples of business email compromise that we see. There are bogus invoice schemes where the attackers have you send funds transfers to accounts that they own, so they'll make a fake invoice. CEO impersonation or CEO fraud. You probably have experienced this one. This is a very, very popular one where they're sending emails that look like they are one of the business leaders and asking the employees to perform some type of action, send money, buy gift cards. Are you there? I need your personal cell phone number. I need a favor, things like that. Account compromise, where their email account is actually hacked and used to send invoices or new wiring instructions or malicious attachments to everybody in the contact book. I actually worked as a real estate paralegal, and one of the brokers had business email compromise, and I sent $2.1 million to a cyber attacker. They sent me new wiring instructions, and I didn't know to reach out and verify. That was in my past life. Third-party impersonation. So oftentimes they will impersonate your, attorney or some authority figure. Maybe they've researched on LinkedIn, seen that you liked a particular attorney's page, and then they pretend to be that person trying to get some confidential information. And then data theft. So oftentimes employees that are in, HR or finance are targeted to obtain some type of personally identifiable information, tax documents, things like that. Another goal that they have is to deliver some malware through attachments. We see a lot of different forms of malicious attachments. It could look like it's a voicemail message transcription, could be a resume. again, going back to that research side, they are particularly targeting employees that they know have certain job responsibilities. So, if you are in a finance role, they're probably going to send you something like a payment information or an invoice or a receipt. If you are in sales, they might send you, a request for a quote or some pricing information or something like that with a malicious attachment. If we also see attachments that go out looking like they come from HR people with updates on benefits or policies or anything HR related. If you got an email that said, please take a look at our updated paid time off policy, you might open it to see what has changed. W-2s and tax forms is a big scam that happens in the beginning of the year. And then, any type of scan or fax or things like that. Here's an example of some of those W-2 beginning of the year tax scams. There's one that target people in their role in their job. I need all the W-2s for all of the employees. Then there are also W-2 tax scams that target people on an individual level. So might say that you have an illegal alien status, or your return has not been accepted. The IRS will never, ever email you, ever. And oftentimes these documents get past antivirus programs with no problem. Those phishing emails contain that sense of urgency for the recipient. When you open the document, there will even be, steps either in the email itself or in the document showing you how to go in and click that little enable content button. What that does is enables macros, and then you open that attachment and the malware is going to start functioning. If you don't enable those macros, the attack can be unsuccessful. So they give you a lot of guidance, and then all those little bits of code are going to run, and it can do a lot of different things. It can allow remote control of your device. It can install a keylogger that's keeping track of every keystroke that you make, whether it's financial information or your logins, your username and password. It's also a very popular way to deliver ransomware. If you haven't heard about ransomware yet, it is just increasing in popularity tenfold. It's a type of malware that infects your computer. Next thing you know, everything's locked up. You can't access any of your files. They're all encrypted, and they leave you a message saying, we have all of your files and you need to pay us X amount of money in cryptocurrency, and we'll give you a code and you can unlock all of your data. Oftentimes this ransomware is programmed to travel laterally across your network. So it starts on one computer and then it infects other computers, servers, storage devices. One of the biggest problems with ransomware is downtime. Hopefully, I'm sure C2 has fantastic backups in place for you, but even still, wiping those machines and restoring them from backups takes significant time. So you have your network can be down for days at a time, and then there are usually lingering effects from that ransomware. Part of the reason why this is so popular nowadays is because you can literally go and buy ransomware as a service kits on the dark web. It's almost like multi-level marketing for ransomware. There are the ransomware creators, and they make these little kits. They even have tech support. So if you're not, a really tech savvy person and you're trying to launch these ransomware kits, they'll help you to make sure your attacks are successful. And the person who buys the ransomware kit gets half of the decryption price, and the person who made the ransomware kit gets the other half. So anybody can launch these attacks now with this ransomware as a service available on the dark web. Completely terrifying. The other thing about ransomware is that it's changed, particularly over the last 6 months or so. Originally, it was, I'm the bad guy, I infect you, I demand money to get your key, to give you your key and unlock all of your files and your data. But our IT teams were like, we're going to have really good backups in place. We're just going to wipe and restore all of these machines and bring them back up, and we're not going to pay you anything. So then the criminals had to go back to the drawing board. Now what they do is they infect you before you get that message. They exfiltrate a bunch of your data, and then the demand becomes, you need to pay me X amount of money in cryptocurrency to unlock your files. Then you need to pay me X amount more for me to delete that information off of my servers. And if you don't pay me, then I'm going to release your information on the dark web. and now you're going to have a data breach on your hands. You're going to have to notify all of your customers that you've lost their information. You might have to, send letters, which is going to cost money. You might have to provide credit monitoring depending on the information that's lost, and never mind the reputational effects and everything else that happens. So it's one of those things that where you're between a rock and a hard place. So, there's complications if you don't pay and your information is released. And obviously, if we continue paying these criminals, they're going to keep attacking us. So the best protection for this is user training and awareness and some really good endpoint protection. This is a word bubble of the most common passwords. As you can see, we take a lot of shortcuts when it comes to passwords, some really easy things, 1, 2, 3, QWERTY across the keyboard. Attackers are always after usernames and passwords, whether they are collecting them directly through, keyloggers or malicious attachments and websites, or they're gathering them from the dark web. What you see here is some of the largest breaches that have occurred in recent history. In the middle column is the number of accounts that were affected. On the right-hand side, you see the information that was stolen every time, usernames and passwords, usernames and passwords. The reason why, so they will send emails trying to get your information as well. I actually got a text message yesterday saying my Netflix account had been suspended, and they were trying to get me to click a link and go log in so that they could get my login information. And then it will take you to a page that looks like Netflix, but it's not, and they're going to try to gather even more information from you. So this is why this is so popular. The attackers know that whatever I used for my password for MyFitnessPal or MySpace or any of those old accounts, they'll find that on the dark web. They'll see that for Dropbox, for example, I use shanna@company.com, and my password is sunshine123!! So then they're going to take that password and they're going to try it across some of my more valuable accounts. So even though my Netflix account wasn't actually suspended, they're going to try to take my username and password that I enter in and try my bank account information or, a retirement account or anything that they might find that has more value. So on a business level, they'll take these compromised business emails and try to log into your Office 365 or your QuickBooks or whatever other software system that they think that you have valuable information in. So one of the solutions here is, because businesses use on average about 20 software as a service or cloud applications, it would be very hard to remember a long, unique password for every single account that you log into. So you need to use some tools to help. A password manager is a great option for this, where you can create a long, strong, unique random password for every site that you log into. All of my passwords look like a toddler fell asleep on a keyboard. Prior to working for a cybersecurity company, I used the same password across all of my accounts, and it had been compromised about 29 times. So in this case, when you're creating a unique password for each account, in the event that one of those passwords is breached from that vendor, you can immediately go in and change that password to a new random unique one. And then you're not allowing the attackers the ability to access all of your other accounts. I strongly recommend that you implement this in your business, also in your personal life as well. So I say 2021 should be the year of the digital detox. Go in, set up a password manager. There are a lot of integrations. They have apps. There are browser extensions that you can put in to help automatically fill all of those passwords in. I can log into my accounts with my password manager and multi-factor authentication faster than most people can type out their kid's name, dog's name, year they were born. So create those unique passwords. And if you take one thing away from this webinar, only one tip, the most important one that I can give you is to turn on two-factor or multi-factor authentication on any important site that you're logging into. So you've probably run into this in the past. If you log into your bank account for the first time from a new device, it's going to, you type your username and password in, but then it's going to send you a text message code, and you can't get into that bank account until you enter that SMS code. That is two-factor authentication. So there's a few different options for that. There is a text code that you can receive. Not the most secure way. Those codes can be intercepted. It's not easy, but it can happen. But if the site or application that you're using only has the ability for text message codes, still turn it on anyway, because some protection is definitely better than none. There are also apps that you can have running on your phone that create a new random code every 30 seconds, and you'll enter that into the site you're logging into. Or you could have a little key fob or a little device that you carry around and plug into your computer or your phone for that second form of authentication. Two-factor is a combination of something that you know, which is your username and your password, and then something that you have or something that you are. So biometrics is also a popular form of multi-factor authentication, whether it's a fingerprint or a face or an eye scan. Even if an attacker is able to get your password, as soon as they see that they need that second factor, they're typically going to move on. So in that Dropbox to Microsoft example we used before, they try to use my Shanna@company.com and Sunshine123. What they're going to get is a screen that looks like this. Obviously, they can't approve that sign-in request because they don't have that app on their phone, and they're going to move on to another low-hanging fruit. One of the other tips that you've probably heard, and we think it's important to express, is as you're traveling around, connecting to public Wi-Fi systems, this can be a dangerous practice as your devices are now communicating with a bunch of strangers. You have no idea who could be on those Wi-Fi connections. They could be running tools or scans against your devices. They could be attempting to sniff or monitor your activity or look for vulnerabilities on your devices. The other risk you run is that you could potentially be using something called an evil twin, which in my picture here is where you grow a goatee and you turn evil. But in reality, what an evil twin is an attacker's device that's set up, a wireless router that's named exactly what you would expect the public Wi-Fi in that area to be named. So maybe it's Starbucks guest Wi-Fi or Marriott Wi-Fi, and you get tricked into connecting to what you believed was being provided by the establishment. But instead, you're connecting to an attacker's device, and they have strong control and visibility of all of your activity while they're providing you with that internet service. So if you have to travel around for your job, a couple of solutions. If you don't have company VPNs available, which the pandemic has been fantastic for making those types of services available where they weren't previously, you'll want to use that company VPN, or you should utilize cellular personal hotspots, whether that's through a little brick that you get from your cell phone provider, or turning your personal cell phone into a public hotspot. Make sure that you have a very strong password on there and that you're not sharing it out with other people. And then the last little story we're going to tell here is about a study that was done by the University of Illinois. They dropped about 300 of those removable USB thumb drive devices, and they laid them all over campus. They wanted to see how many people would pick them up and plug them into computers. Almost half, some within minutes of being dropped. People were claiming that they were looking for information to be able to return them. There's a couple different risks that come with USB keys. We strongly discourage the use of these if you don't have to, but we also realize that some people do. So there could be malware that's installed on these devices. So a lot of companies will scan them initially, but they don't necessarily conduct ongoing scanning of those USB keys. The bigger problem, though, is that if your organization does allow these USB keys, you run a higher risk of insider threat. So an employee, maybe not even trying to be malicious, might decide to work on the weekend, so they take some confidential files off of your server, and then that USB key falls out of their purse on the way back into the office, and they don't know where it went. We know from the research that 50% of the people are going to pick it up and plug it in, and if there is sensitive information on that, you could find yourself in the middle of a data breach. So if you do have to use these, there are some encryption tools where you'll need a special code to get in them to help protect the information. As C2 mentioned before, antivirus and firewalls is not really enough nowadays to protect your organization. We get asked all the time, why that isn't enough and why they need more protections in place. This is a huge challenge in our landscape today. Traditional antivirus, the way that it works is it goes up into the cloud and it gets all of the new malware that's been detected by the antivirus company, brings it down to your computer, and it says, all right, this is everything that we're aware of. If you see this come up on the computer, then we want you to block it. The problem is there are 4 to 5 new malware samples that are created every single second. So it's impossible for those antivirus companies to keep up with that speed, and they know that. So, they change a little bit of the code in the malware. It's no longer a direct match. They fool someone into interacting with that malware, and the antivirus isn't likely to pick it up and detect it. 350,000 new malware samples are created every single day. So now what? We've shared a few stories. We're going to talk about what you can do to bolster some better cybersecurity. We're also going to talk about how things have changed. Back 20 years ago, this was our biggest concern with technology, if our clocks were going to update. Now we're worried about everything. Back 20 years ago, we worked in one place, one device, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Now we are working everywhere. Back in 2000, we logged into our Windows screen, and that was about it. But in 2020, we might log into any or all of these before noon. Back 20 years ago, most of your important information was stored in a dusty closet with some devices that were overheating all the time. Now your important data is everywhere. And in the year 2000, off the shelf commercial antivirus was sufficient, but we know that that is a major challenge nowadays. A lot of businesses have gone through and protected themselves from a physical sense. So we look at how you would protect your business from a burglary, and you've installed these items that control access. You have an alarm system that alerts you to any suspicious activity, motion sensors. You store all of your valuables in locked cabinets and rooms, and then you have clear policies and procedures. You do employee training, you have a handbook, you do building inspections. Yet the average loss from a burglary is about $2,000. Much in the way we protect a business physically, we can also protect it digitally. So we can control who has access to the data. We can have an alarm system that alerts us if anything suspicious is occurring. We secure our assets, which in this case is the data that we hold, and we have clear policies and procedures. We have an incident response plan. We provide employee training, and we do ongoing scanning and testing. The average loss from a cyber breach is about $160,000. I think the most recent statistic has brought it up to $200,000. But yeah, most businesses, when we look under the hoods, it looks like this. Probably because this is how business owners feel. There's a lot of different options out there. What technology do they need? It's just very overwhelming. So we recommend a layered approach so that there's no single point of failure. We have multiple different solutions that are in place, and we approach it from a lot of different angles. We have a foundation of clear policies, procedures, and plans. We train our teams so that we have that strong human firewall, and then we have those technology components that go beyond antivirus and firewall. So we're going to tell a little story here of how we employ this defense in-depth method. So the first thing that we're going to do in this model, we're trying to stop that attacker at the top from getting down to all of our information at the bottom and either accessing our sensitive data on our servers, cloud or physical, and or trying to get us to pay some money in a ransom in Bitcoin. So how do we stop that attacker from getting down to our information? First thing we need to do, if we walked into the doctor and they just started prescribing medications and surgeries without asking us what was wrong, we'd probably think things were a little weird. So we go through a threat modeling and risk assessment exercise to figure out and make sure that we're developing a program that is going to bring us to an acceptable risk level for a reasonable investment. We figure out our weaknesses. So what is the data that we're trying to protect? Who are we protecting it from? Where does that data live? What are the risks if something were to happen, and how bad are the consequences? What is the potential downtime associated with an incident? How much would that cost my business? If you had a ransomware attack and you were down for 2 weeks, what would your payroll expenses alone be? How much revenue would you lose? How much business would you lose? What are those consequences? How likely is it that we would need to protect it? And then really, how much trouble am I willing to go through to prevent those types of consequences? And what are the things that we can do to prevent that attack? The next step is implementation of those solutions. So if we identify that business email compromise attempts are a likely threat, that likely to come in through an email attack, we're going to try to stop those attacks from reaching us. So some technology solutions, our firewalls and our antivirus, email filtering for your email clients, so those attacks don't even reach the inbox. We're going to monitor our email logs for any indications of compromise, like they went in and changed some rules or set those types of things up. We're going to monitor all of our systems. We're going to scan to see where there are known vulnerabilities on our networks, our computers, or our websites that we can fix. If we want to take it a step further, we can have an ethical hacker actually attempt to break into our network and see if they're able to do those things that we identified in that risk assessment and see how damaging that compromise could be. We're going to look for compromised credentials on the dark web. That's one of the most common attack methods. So we want to monitor for those ongoing compromises, especially if you are using a lot of cloud applications. Those passwords are your keys to the kingdom. So ongoing credential monitoring for any compromises, and then website scanning to see if there are any vulnerabilities or malware injections in our marketing websites. The next step here is we're going to have some proper authentication in place. We're going to have training and policies. If we think about how these attackers operate, they start with their research on the company, and they're on LinkedIn, they look, they identify who they want to target for that specific spear phishing attack. Based on that person's role, they're going to develop a malicious PDF that's going to have some code that's going to run, that's going to allow me to take over that computer, extract all the information, and then deliver a ransomware payload. So I'm going to attach that PDF to a phishing email that looks like a resume and send it to a recruiter, or some payroll information and send it to a finance person and ask them to take a look at it. So hopefully our employees have received guidance on how to use technology, and we have clear policies in place. They know to reach out and verify any type of request like that. They also receive ongoing notifications about current cyber-related topics or scams or new vulnerabilities, so they're up to date on those different types of tactics. We also, hopefully our email filtering keeps that email from reaching the employee's inbox, but if it does, then our next line of defense is making sure that employee's been trained on how to recognize those phishing emails when they come in. Monthly simulations will help build up that muscle memory in recognizing the attack, and also keep those employees hyper vigilant in identifying and reporting phishing attempts when they're coming in. And then they also receive timely and up-to-date awareness training videos about recent breaches and how they occurred, and emerging scams that are increasing in popularity. And because of all of that ongoing training and reinforcement, our employee does the right thing and says, I'm going to give the CFO a call and quickly verify this. And as soon as that employee sees that it didn't come from the CFO, they're not going to open the attachment and crisis averted, right? But employees are human, so we respond to those types of psychological triggers. If the attack is successful and that employee does open the email and that malware starts to function, then we have some advanced endpoint solutions in place. Hopefully the devices are patched so there aren't any vulnerabilities for it to exploit, or it jumps in and notices that files are being copied off of the server, and we're able to stop that attack on that endpoint level. Or the malware starts to run, and some of the common ransomware signatures we're able to identify, then our team's going to jump in and contain that and stop anything bad from happening on that workstation level. 24/7 monitoring for any type of suspicious activity, email account takeover. But if we don't have that last line of protection in place with advanced endpoint protection and encryption solutions, and the malware does start running on the computer, we might get a ransomware message that pops up like this. And then we want to make sure we're prepared for those types of scenarios as well. Our employees will have clear incident response plans to follow in that case, so that they know exactly step by step what to do. And we really encourage a paper copy of this if your employees are remote. In my desk drawer here, I have my incident response plan, because if all of my files are encrypted, then I won't have the phone number for my IT person or some way to be able to to get in contact with them if I don't have that paper copy. So they have step-by-step instructions on how to shut down their computer, disconnect it from the network, and contact the next appropriate parties. We also want to make sure that we have good backups in place so that we can wipe and restore any of those devices and not lose any data. And then last layer of protection is if all of those levels in that defense in depth fail and that attack is successful, we want to have good comprehensive cyber insurance in place so that we are able to recoup any financial losses or any damages. But also we want to make sure that all of those other layers are in place so that we can prove to our insurance company or our board or our clients or anybody else that would be an interested party that we put forth a strong effort to maintain a proper cybersecurity program. We had multiple layers of protection, a lot of preventive measures, and then hopefully that way our cyber insurance claim isn't denied. We also want you to think about the way that you look at cybersecurity. It's not a project. It's not something that you can just do one time and you're protected and you get to walk away. It's really a posture that everyone in your organization has to take from senior leadership all the way down. You can have phenomenal IT people that take cybersecurity seriously, but all it takes is one employee to put you at risk. So the whole company needs to have that attitude and posture in dealing with cybersecurity. So we're excited to announce that C2 has a free cybersecurity essentials package available for all of their clients. So when we talk about that defense in-depth strategy and the multiple layers, the first thing that's being offered is a cybersecurity health checkup. So you can go through and see where your risks are, where your weaknesses are, find out where you stand, and begin to look at how to build that cybersecurity program that brings you to the reasonable level of risk for a reasonable investment. You also are going to get external network vulnerability scanning for one IP address. If you have transitioned to or from remote working environments and you're doing firewall configurations to accommodate that remote connection back in, you definitely want to make sure that you're doing external network vulnerability scanning and just seeing if there are any holes in the outside of your network. There are some crazy tools that the attackers can use to find devices with vulnerabilities or exposed ports and things just right online on any device in the entire world. So make sure that you're running that external network vulnerability scan. And the last module that you get are the threat alert systems. So twice a week, you'll get a notification of current scams and attack methods, patch updates, just different cybersecurity notifications so that you can stay up to date on the way that the landscape is changing and the current attack methods. So I think at this point, Dave will open it up to some questions and turn it back over to C2.
Thanks so much, Shanna. And we are going to transition to the promised Q&A segment of today's webinar now. In fact, over the last few minutes, a few questions have trickled in. Just a reminder, if you have a question for Shanna or for Jeff or for Kevin, you can type those questions at any time into the Q&A box on your screen. Also, if your question is specific to one of these three people, if you could, please indicate that person's name in your question. All right, well, let's jump right into this. We have a question here, Shanna, from Trisha, and I think this is a good question to kick things off with. Trisha wants to know, what are the top things we can focus on to improve cybersecurity? Let's say the top three things. What are your top three tips, Shanna?
Absolutely. So hopefully, Trisha, you don't mind this, but I would like to make it top 5 things if you don't mind. Fortunately, some of them are pretty easy. So the first thing that you can do that I really recommend is user training. It's kind of like people patching, like a software update for your staff. So ongoing training and awareness, it's something that you can implement right away. It doesn't cost any money other than your time or maybe putting together a presentation and sharing some of that knowledge with them. That is your best line of defense, is that user training. The next important thing I would recommend is to create unique passwords and put them in a password manager and enable two-factor authentication. If I had to give a TED talk, it would be about the 3 attack vectors that bad actors use and the things that you can do, and multi-factor authentication is always at the top of that list. It's going to stop the bad guys in their tracks for the most part, and it's so easy to implement and get used to. So that's kind of 2 combined into 1, let's say. Make sure all your systems are updated and patched. You know how we get those notifications on our phone that we've got an update to install, or Windows tells us that it's going to restart in 2 seconds, and we have the snooze options that you wish it said that you could snooze it for like 14 years. Those are updates and patches. That means that there's typically some type of security vulnerability that's been identified. The software manufacturer or the vendor has applied a little patch, just like you would think of if you're patching jeans, and you want to get that installed as quickly as possible. So make sure all your systems are updated and patched, that you're doing that ongoing vulnerability scanning, and make sure that you have good backups. You don't want to lose data. You don't want to lose anything if you are a victim of a cyber attack. We want to put measures in place to prevent these types of incidents from occurring, but we also want to make sure we're prepared for inevitably when they do.
Thanks, Shanna, and thank you, Tricia, for the question. Let's go next to this question from Gail. Shanna, you just mentioned that one of your tips is using a password manager, and Gail has a question about storing passwords specifically in browsers. She wants to know specifically about Chrome. Is that okay? Is it okay to store a password in a browser like Chrome?
While I applaud that you are looking at creating unique passwords and finding a way to store them, I don't recommend storing them in the browser because there's no form of authentication there. So, let's just say that, Gail, you're sitting at your seat and you're doing your work and you get up to go use the restroom. I can come in and slide into your seat and go to your bank account or some other type of website. And if you're storing your passwords in your browser, it doesn't know whether it's me or you sitting in that chair, and it can auto-populate those passwords into whatever login it is. So just like how you've got that little icon up in the top in the browser, there are password managers that have those types of browser extensions, and it will do the same thing, but you have to actually log into the password manager first, and don't forget to enable two-factor authentication on that password manager.
Okay, I'm seeing that we have one more question here, but we do have a few minutes left. So if you have a question, get it into the Q&A box. Let's go now to this question from Stan. This is a good question. Shanna, I'm going to throw this one out to you once again. Can this help us get a discount on our cyber insurance policy?
Good question. Stan, you probably are feeling the pinch of the relatively new cyber insurance premiums. Insurance is always based on risk modeling. So and this is a relatively new service that the insurance companies are providing as far as cyber insurance. So they don't have a lot of risk modeling to go through. We're going to see some wild fluctuations in cyber insurance premium prices. If you remember when you first got your policy, most underwriters are sending out cybersecurity questionnaires to help them in identifying what your risk profile looks like. So it might have asked you about, different technology solutions and things that you may or may not have in place, or some compliance questions. So when you filled that out, you had a certain number of protections in place, and they determined your risk. A lot of Defendify customers find that when they go back to their carrier, and it depends on who your carrier is, but if they've implemented additional cybersecurity measures and can show that improvement in their cyber posture and the things that they're doing to reduce their risk, a lot of them are getting discounts on their cyber insurance premiums. And some companies wait till their renewal to attempt that, and other ones just reach directly out to their carriers and say, we've implemented this program, we're putting a lot of other measures in place, and we want to see if we can get a discount. But yes, it can potentially.
Okay, well, thanks to everyone who submitted a question. We really appreciate your participation today. We're going to wrap things up in just a moment here, but before we do that, Shanna, Kevin, Jeff, any real quick closing remarks you'd like to make?
Yeah, Dave, this is Kev. Shanna, you stole the show again. So great job, and thanks for spending the time with us and getting the message out. So really appreciate it, and looking forward to, jumping into things with our clients. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for being partners.
Yeah.
And a big thanks to all three of our speakers today, Kevin Powers, Jeff French, and Shanna Utgard, for all of their insights. Before we let you go, just a few final notes. Today's webinar was recorded, and you'll be receiving an email with a link to access that recording as soon as it's available. So check your inboxes for that. And also, that email will include a link to a very brief survey that we hope you'll take. We'd really like to know your thoughts concerning today's webinar. So please be sure to take a couple of moments to complete that survey. Thanks so much for being with us today. That does conclude today's webinar. Thanks so much for spending some time with us, everybody. Have a great day.